Welcome to another edition, another week of Political Breakfast. So glad that you are here and listening on WABE. I'm Lisa Rayam, and here with me as always is our producer, Lily Oppenheimer, and our strategists, Tharon Johnson and Brian Robinson. Happy Cinco de Mayo to all of you.
How about that? Hope everybody gets lots of queso today.
A few margaritas.
Yeah. I'm here at Trilith and here for the Georgia Chamber of Commerce Spring Board meeting. So shout out to Chris Clark and the senior team over there. But we're all trying to figure out, as soon as this board meeting commences, probably around lunchtime after the tour, I think some shots are definitely in order. But no, great facility down here. For those of our listeners who've never been, don't worry, B-Rob, they're not a client. I don't have any interest, no investments in this property, but to hear about it is one thing, Lisa, but to actually see it is amazing. Yeah. So we're here for this wonderful board meeting. A lot of folks are eager to hear what's on the agenda. I'm particularly interested in hearing about tariffs. So I'm going to be short-winded today so we can get this wrapped up so I can get in this meeting and hear about how these inflationary tariffs are just tearing up our country. But hopefully they'll be able to promote some optimism.
Yeah, tariffs really are dominating the news, aren't they? And have been, for the last few weeks?
They have. B-Rob and I were actually on CNN this weekend, not as early. So thank you, Victor Blackwell and the producers over there for not getting us up at 6 a.m. But, B-Rob did a good job in talking about the balance that he is, Republican has got a wall. My job was to point out how they're inflationary. But, Lisa, I'll say this. The president, it said 2 years. He's also kind of, warning the American people that it's going to be tough. We could be heading towards a recession. So Democrats have just got to figure out a way to how to, make this, tell the truth about it, number one. But then two, also let the American people know that not just with short-term, 401k losses in the stock market. And I was reading this weekend that you look at the ports, like a lot of these shipping containers that now will be coming over to these tariffs are going to affect. A lot of them are empty. There's just not much activity that is going on. So it's just a lot of things that we should be concerned about as Americans. And I know Georgia workers here at the Georgia Chamber are definitely figuring out how they're going to move forward.
Well, Senator Raphael Warnock had a town hall and kind of taking aim at the Trump administration. But at the same time, people asked him, well, what are you doing to curb this? What are you doing to stop this? Not many answers there.
Well, I think him and Senator Ossoff, it's a very delicate balance, right? I mean, Senator Ossoff in his town hall and also Senator Warnock reminded the constituents that, hey, we're senators. If you really want to stop what is happening, you have to, number one, vote. You got to vote people, vote more Democrats into office. But there's also just been this influx of executive orders. And so while the senator did not have probably the answer that everyone wanted to hear, but I think he was very honest with the folks. And he told them, Lisa, look, we're doing everything we can to the best of our ability to try to stop these executive orders, stop this tariff negotiation. But when you have a president who's ignoring the Supreme Court, Lisa, he's ignoring the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is telling him to do things. And then he's like, I'm going to wait and see. And I mean, that's two different things. That's dealing with immigration. But also there's just no level of respect for order and decorum anymore. So I think that the senators needed to hear that feedback from the public so they can continue to communicate with them to the best of their ability what they can do.
I think the Democrats are dealing with something that the Republicans are dealing with as well. There's great frustration amongst the bases of both parties by the gridlock that we've had over the last decade or more. Both sides are open to abandoning old norms, old traditional ways of doing things, because those checks and balances, those safeguards had been used to such a degree, have been weaponized to such a degree that nothing was happening. Nothing happens in our country on the national federal government level anymore. And so that's why Donald Trump's got a lot of leeway when it comes to breaking norms and trying to push his agenda forward. His base has been demanding that those things he's promising happen. Democrats are basically saying, we don't care about what a traditional role of the senator is. Y'all got to do something to stop this. I think both sides are just super frustrated by the lack of progress, the lack of ability to get things done in this country. And it's a threat to us. We keep talking about this threat to democracy, and it's something that now codes Democrat Party. This any talk of democracy now codes Democrat. That really bothers me because I don't think it's true. For one thing, I think there are a lot of us Republicans very invested, very concerned about the future of democracy in this country. But I think the fact that both sides have managed to bring government to a halt has created a scenario where Americans are open to extra legal things amongst leadership on both sides. And I know Tharon's job is to sit there and say, well, Trump's the one doing it all. But Joe Biden tried to pay off student loan debt. $400 billion was told no by the Supreme Court, and then went off and tried to do it another way. So from the very beginning, he had no authority to spend that money. That's the congressional prerogative. So both parties have got to figure this out. I think we got to figure out a way to make sure Washington can work again. And that may mean doing away with the filibuster, at least in the short term.
You got all these student loans. You mentioned the loans today coming due for a lot of people. Another frustration, another layer of frustration on America.
They took the loans out. I mean, did they think when they took the loans out, did they think that the payday wasn't going to come, that there wasn't going to be a moment where they had to pay it back? This is the moral hazard we have created if there is any frustration about having to pay back loans.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Tharon?
Well, real quick, look, it depends on your situation and your family structure, whether or not you started on first base or second base, like many of my colleagues did. I didn't start on second base, right? So for those of us who had to actually go to college, I went to HBCU. There's no way that I wouldn't have been able to graduate had there not been for Pell Grant. All right, let's talk about this. Me and B-Rob talked about these cuts. I don't care who you are. And let's just bring it home, Lisa. I'm fired up today. I'm on my second cup of coffee. There are a lot of white, black, Asian, Hispanic people who went to the University of Georgia off the Hope Scholarship, right? That was the play. Now, like Ryan's raising his hand, right?
Yeah.
So good old Hope. But guess what? They're not going to tell you. Some of those white, Asian, black, Hispanic folks were beneficiaries from Pell Grant, right? They received financial assistance. And as we see tuition hikes going up, this federal assistance is to me, It transcends race. It transcends class. Everyone needs an opportunity to be able to have a accessible opportunity to higher education. When you start eliminating federal money to go help schools, he's talking about now cutting possibly $67 million from Howard University. He talks about HBCUs, Lisa, but it's an unfunded mandate. So I do believe that Democrats did take a calculated risk and forgave all of this student loan debt. People were responding to it. It didn't transition into a win for Kamala Harris, unfortunately. But I do believe that if you listen to some of the testimonies, I mean, people need these loans. And I said this before on this podcast, one of my proudest days was when I called my mother and said, Mom, this high ass interest rate that you're paying every single month for me to have this Parent Plus loan, it's gone. It's paid off. So that is our responsibility, B-Rod. Like, I knew one day I was going to have to pay it off. But guess what, man? If you can... I was reading this, doctors, lawyers, all these people that we want to grow this economy. Georgia's always talking about attracting the best and brightest talent. Well, these people graduate from college, Lisa, with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of debt and loans. I mean, these are some of our best and brightest people. So we got to figure out a way to kind of make it plain and say, look, what the Trump administration is rolling back and overturning is going to be hurtful. But I just think it's just going to be another thing along his attacks on higher education and the student loan debt forgiveness that he's going to overturn and kind of go a different direction with is only going to contribute more to the angst and frustration that a lot of these people have.
My thing on is this. There are people out there with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, people who perhaps didn't have parents who could pay, perhaps didn't have guidance on making some pragmatic decisions. My advice is this, and we have got to restore some rationality to the higher education system. Do not take out hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans for higher education. Don't do it. I don't know about other states, but you can get an excellent education in the university system of Georgia. I am a product of it. I'm not necessarily exemplary of its excellence, but many others are. Go do those things rather than take out hundreds of thousands in debt. I don't know what profession you're going into where I would recommend going into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. It's dumb. anything over 50, I'm really very dubious of. And you can go to technical college here for free, but our university system is a great bargain for what you get out of it. Don't go to some private school if, like Tharon said, you have parents who can't afford to subsidize you, or if you're going into a profession that perhaps is a public service profession like education. It's noble, it's needed. Thank you for doing it. But don't go take out $150,000 in loans to go be a middle school teacher. Don't do it.
Well, to all the teachers out there, and shout out to our boy Hector, who's a loyal listener. I think, and real quick, I'll say this, Brian. I understand that, but I have to respectfully disagree. You got to think about it, right? You and I, you're a little older than me. You just turned 50. I'm 3 years behind you. So let's just say in the 90s, when you and I were talking to our counselors, and we were about to make the next step in our life from high school, right? Our parents had got us to a point to say, hey, look, our job is to get you through high school and graduate. And the ultimate goal is to get a scholarship, right? The parents don't have to pay. You didn't go, I don't think you went to private school growing up. I didn't go to private school growing up.
I did.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Well, there we go. All right. So I went to public school. And so here we go. So this is my example. Lisa, I went to the highest bidder. All right, here we go. My mama was like, your ass going to school. And I didn't want to stay in Athens. No shade to UGA. But growing up there for 18 years of my life, I just want to get out of Athens. So, B-Rob, I followed the money. I went to whatever school that were able to provide the financial system.
Yeah.
I didn't have a choice. I would have loved and went to Harvard. I would have loved to gone to these other PWIs. Hell, I would even love to, travel to the West Coast. So B-Rob, I think that while you make that argument that, hey, make a rational decision, we teach our young people now that you can aspire to be whoever you want to be and go wherever you want to go. And some of these institutions have the majors, and particularly if you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be an actress, you want to be in film. SCAD is the highest school, B-Rob. You know this, right? I mean, their tuition is through the roof. So it's very disingenuous. Not saying you're disingenuous, but I don't feel like I should tell a young person who may not have the means, hey, you can't go to SCAD, which produces some of the best talent when it comes to arts and culture in this country. Let's find a way to give them that assistance, because I just think that we all know that if you can get through education, and whether it's a technical degree or not, it makes you more employable. You have a better running start to your future. It gives you the tangible foundation in order to survive and compete. And so I just think it's just very hard to tell a young person, hey, you shouldn't go here, you shouldn't go there because you're going to take out the loan debt. It is a responsibility when you do take out those loans, but let's make sure
That's exactly right.
Yeah, but it is.
That's
but my point is, shout out to President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, who tried to give those folks relief. I mean, B-Rob, how many lawyers and doctors, lawyers and doctors right now who still paying on their loans. And these are some of the brightest people in our country. And so I think that they would want that relief too if it was given to them.
Yeah, my thing is go do what you want to do, follow your heart, but then depend on your own wallet. Don't turn around and ask working class Americans who didn't go to college to pay off your loans. Don't ask me to pay off your loans, right? It's a decision that you're making. You own it, right? You own it. And if it works out for you, fantastic. But it's not a responsibility of the government. And I have a problem with doing it in arrears because it creates this moral hazard.
So no sympathy there for those who are stuck with this debt.
I do feel sympathy. I think some people weren't given, Tharon mentioned going to the guidance counselor. I think some people were given really bad guidance. I think some people don't have somebody at home who can take them through this process and make those great decisions or make better decisions. So I do have empathy. Now, 100% do. That's why I'm yelling, please don't do this. This is not good for your future.
But what do we celebrate in the state of Georgia, Lisa? How many headlines do you guys talk about on Morning Edition? I mean, one of the headlines is that these students who have 4.3, 4.4 GPAs, right? Many of them, middle class to well off. Some of them are poor. I just think that to push back on the point, Brian, is how do you tell that young woman or man who's done everything that they were supposed to do, right? And this guidance counselor, this mother, this father, these teachers want them to go and have the best college experience. And I just think that in this country where we have the best economy supposedly, right? We're the country that's supposed to be welcoming all. We got to find a way to be able to give those opportunities to people other than just scholarships. I do think that it becomes a level of prioritization. The Trump administration can prioritize student loan. They don't have to do away with it, Brian. You know this, right? I mean, he's proposing trillions of dollars for defense, which we need. We got to keep the country safe. But there's just other things that I think that he can cut, other things that he can do. And he can actually say, look, I can't give you full forgiveness, but maybe I can give you a percentage, right? I just think that just to come in and just overdo it because it was something that Biden did is going to hurt a big sector of our American worker community. And I think a lot of these people who are now matriculating through, they do have to make those tough decisions. But I want the best and brightest going to whatever school his or her opportunity presents itself to. And I want them to be able to make a decision like I did. That, hey, if the scholarship runs out and you decide to take a turn, take out a loan, you know what you're getting yourself into, but let's make sure this person has a job when they get out and they can pay that loan back.
We wish all those people well who now got this big bill.
I'm out fighting for the little guy.
Hanging over their head.
Brian just like, look, y'all need to get over it. I made it. Look, I'm free.
And it's just the beginning for them.
Pull your bootstraps up. Pull yourself up
quickly because I feel for them. I feel for them because it's just like, gosh, all of a sudden you get this big bill in the mail. You know how that feels. A lot going on in Georgia politics over the weekend. Charlie Bailey, the new Georgia Democratic head chair, and Tharon, I'll begin with you. How do you feel about that?
Look, Charlie Bailey is someone who I've known for over 20 years. I met him back when we were both young Democrats in like 1997, 98. And he's someone who has been a loyal supporter of this party. He's paid his dues. He's a well-respected attorney, father, and just a good guy, and ran a really good campaign. And it was a close race. Shout out to Wendy Davis, former Rome city council member who came in second. Went into a runoff, but Charlie now has the torch, and Charlie is the kind of guy we need to do three things, Lisa. Number one, Charlie can raise money. He comes in with some key contacts and people that he can tap into. Number one. Number two, Charlie realizes that we can't be the Democratic Party of Atlanta. We got to get out into the rural areas, and so he's somebody who's grown up outside of a metro area and will do that. And then thirdly, look, he'll bring that fire when we need it. He'll be an attack dog, a person that calls out Republicans when they're wrong. My grandfather used to always tell me, so you know what, grandson, I'm with you when you're right. So we'll be with the Republicans when they're right, but when they're wrong, trust me, Charlie Bailey is going to bring that fire. And so now what we got to do is that now that the election is over, everyone's got to reunite. People had their choices. A lot of other people were elected. But Charlie, to me, that young energy with the fundamentals of fundraising, being very driven around policy and knowing the landscape in Georgia, he'll definitely be a good addition to this winning coalition we need for next year.
Is this something that Republicans are watching closely? And if so, what were they thinking since you're in their head, Brian?
I don't think Republicans care one hoot who the Democratic Party chair of Georgia is. And Charlie Bailey ran on a campaign of bringing winning back to Democrats, and a Republican said to me, well, this is a guy who's 0-2 in races against Republicans on the statewide level, having lost to Chris Carr for AG and then to Burt Jones for lieutenant governor. So that's the only Republican response that I've heard. I think Tharon's much more insightful in what's happening on the Democrat side. As listeners know, I'm not overly involved or interested in the party politics apparatus because it really is sort of a backroom operation. It's not what voters see. If they help with get out the vote, if they help with fundraising, if they help with campaign coordination between all the Democrats who are on the statewide ballot, they can be a net positive to the Democrats. But the future of the Democratic Party, or at least the 2026 prospects of the Democrat Party, depend on Jon Ossoff and whoever the nominee for governor is. That's what's going to really matter. The rest of it is theater. I don't think that Democrats would be different if they had Wendy Davis as a chair or if they had kept Nikema Williams as chair. I just don't think it really matters all that much.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree. I think that Congresswoman Nikema Williams did a good job. She had some wins, she had some losses, but ultimately, look, this is now a paid position. This position is full-time. Shout out to Matthew Wilson, who stepped up in the interim basis to be the chair. He remains as the first vice chair. And be right, I do think it matters. No shade to Wendy and to Congresswoman Williams, but Charlie is just a breath of fresh air. And this is a guy who, yes, he's lost twice statewide, but he's not afraid. He can raise some money, and I do think that he's got to listen to everyone and get it. But we need that apparatus. See, we don't have all this money like y'all have on the Republican side.
Oh, that's not true. That's not true.
No, y'all got Loeffler.
Yeah.
Y'all got, the governor got all this money, this leadership PAC.
That's true.
Burt can self-finance. I mean,
That's true.
he can drop a $100 million check at the drop of a dime.
Yeah.
Your boy Carr, he's worried about that because, what is he again? He's a working class Republican who lives in a ranch house in whatever, side of town.
Yeah.
But I will say this to our listeners. As Brian likes to say that he's not party apparatus, I did see Josh McCoon at your birthday.
Yes,
and the Republican chairman and I had a very pleasant exchange.
He's lost some weight. He looks good.
He's lost some weight. He looks good.
He looks really good.
Yeah,
really good.
So, I did hit him a little bit. He hit me. It was a little friendly fire. But, he showed up.
He did. No, he's a good friend. He's a great guy. I'm glad we have him. And Republicans will be wise to keep him at the top of the party because the alternatives are really strikingly bad, and Josh is the leader that we need at the top of the party, and I think he's a great bridge between the party base and the establishment of the party. I hesitate to use that establishment term, but what I mean by that is those who are currently in power in the state of Georgia from Governor Kemp on down. So hopefully Republicans will have the wisdom to reelect Josh, but I have no doubt that they will. There's a huge support for him across the party.
And last thing I'll say is this, Lisa. Senator Ossoff, he got his guy. Charlie was someone who he supported.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, he kind of came out, I think, and, wanted to be peaceful, exchange of power, but Charlie Bailey is his guy now. So I think that helps the senator build his winning coalition now. As B. Rob did say, we got to make sure we nominate the right person to win in November, you all. Best Democrat, he or she, to win in November. Let's not get this confused. We want to put up a good candidate who can bring that winning coalition back together. So Charlie was the first step. Now we got to have a second, third, fourth, and et cetera steps to make sure that we put out the best ticket.
If I could just really quickly push back on one thing Tharon said about all the money that Republicans have. And yes, Republicans have gotten serious about fundraising and have put the effort into it. You see it on the House and Senate caucus side. You see it with the governor's operation. But Raphael Warnock in 2021 probably just turned on the fundraising tab on his website and he raised $200 million. I mean, it was just something obscene, and that money just poured in. The Democrats set the standard by using national fundraising to pour into Georgia. They saw Georgia as an opportunity and they followed it. They also did some foolish things like put $16 million into a race against Marjorie Taylor Greene just because they thought it felt good. That was dumb use of money. That was dumb following dumb dollars. But statewide, they have figured it out, and Republicans have had to catch up with Democrats when it comes to getting around the country, bringing in money to Georgia, saying this is the battleground for America. This is not just about the next 3 to 4 years in Georgia. This is about the country. And I think that's an important and compelling message for both parties.
Listen, y'all, right now on Cinco de Mayo, Republicans got way more money in the state of Georgia than Democrats. And B-Rob, no, I'm telling the truth. With Kelly Loeffler, I'm giving her a shout out now because, I saw her husband recently. I said I was going to be, fair. The money that she raised, Greater Georgia, sitting on millions, Lisa. You got a Republican governor who is the chair of the Republican Governor Association, right? He can, at the flip of a dime, turn on the spigot and get millions of dollars flowing here. You got candidates who are running who, and this, your boy Raffensperger, right? You talk a lot about him. He got money too. He rich. All these white males who got all this money, they can turn on the spigot. What we got to do as Democrats is that we do have access to go get national money. But the other thing I would push back on, be Rob, we don't have a president in the White House anymore. And so Trump now can raise more money. So I know you remember, you still wake up and have nightmares, all that money we raised in 2020 and 2021 and won.
2018.
But in 2025, you can sleep a little later and 9 o'clock, 9:30 some days, because we got to catch up with the fundraising. That's why the candidates that we choose, Lisa, are so important to be attractive to all these donors.
Democratic State Senator Josh McLaurin launching a campaign for lieutenant governor rather quietly. How does that fare?
Senator McLaurin is a rock star in the Democratic politics. Somewhat controversial. Spent a lot of time this year at the session pushing back on Donald Trump. Correct me if I'm wrong, B-Rob. I think he went to the well almost every single day. Lisa, and those of you all, I'll give him some free publicity, a little free campaign help here. Go look it up on YouTube, Google it. I mean, it was quite entertaining. I think he did these sort of daily life and whatever is Trump doing now. But he also had some legislative wins, too. And he is looked upon as a person who's, I think, a Democrat who can get things done. He worked with a lot of his colleagues, tried to work across the aisle. So I think, look, you'll have other people running in the lieutenant governor's race for Georgia on the Democratic side. But for him to jump out here this soon, right after the session has ended, will probably put a lot of pressure on other folks that have been thinking about it. But he's a bright star, young, energetic, another person who take it to Republicans, not afraid, and definitely will probably be able to raise some significant money.
One thing that would be smart for Democrats to do would be to let Senator McLaurin just have this slot. Don't make him fight for the nomination. This is free advice to the Democrats that I'm sure they won't take. So that's why I can probably give it. It's very difficult for a white male to get through a Democratic primary unless there's some kind of deal struck where, the party infrastructure picks kind of who's going to be in what slot. And look, it's something that Democrats have to do, something that Republicans don't have the luxury of doing, really. But McLaurin does have talent when it comes to communication. He's really good at getting media attention. He knows how to hit the hot buttons in a way that's very effective. And one thing that I don't think people fully appreciate or understand is that talent is actually pretty rare amongst elected office holders. Like that ability to kind of see the playing field, know what's going to be newsworthy, and to have the confidence to go out in front of the media to amplify that message without fear. I deal with candidates all the time who have a good story, have a good news hook, but they're scared to go out because they're afraid of some other issue coming up. McLaurin doesn't have that. He can go out there and face the fire, and that's a great asset for him. My question is this. And this is why Democrats should just let McLaurin have it, because he's running for a worthless office. If you are a Democrat who wins the lieutenant governorship in Georgia, you will have no power. You'll have a nice little Capitol office. You'll have some staff. You'll get to preside in the rostrum, and then that'll be it. You can travel around the state and do ribbon cuttings for, business owners.
Why have a lieutenant governor then? Why have a lieutenant governor?
Well, this is a very good point. Georgia's Constitution gives the lieutenant governor one responsibility, and that is to become governor in the case that the governorship is vacated. It has no other constitutional power. The power that the current lieutenant governor, Burt Jones, has derives from Senate rules. So that allows him to pick people on committees, gives him a spot on the Committee on Assignments, which does that, gives him a big role in what bills come to the floor, what committees bills go to. If we had a Democratic lieutenant governor, before day one of the 2027 session, the Senate Republican Majority Caucus would change the rules and completely strip the lieutenant governor of all power. So it is a complete waste of time. I don't know why any Democrat would give money to that campaign, and I don't know why any Democrat would run. It's you're a placeholder for 4 years. You're setting yourself to run for governor later, but that's it.
So Brian knows it, but let me just give him a little reminder. So the Democrats just elected a white guy as the chair of the Democratic Party of Georgia. So this whole plea that white men can't get elected in Democratic politics is not true.
Y'all are being strategic.
Our last governor, Roy Barnes, last time I checked, he's white. All right. John Ossoff, we just had him on last week. So this whole thing that white people can't, has a problem getting elected in Democratic politics in Georgia is just blatantly false. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but what you're really getting at is that with the electorate being so overwhelmingly black in a primary, then that white person or woman, Jen Jordan won a primary, right, and went on to face your guy, Chris Carr. So white women and white men can win primaries in Georgia. Is it more difficult? Yeah. But, we want the best candidate. We don't care who that person is, and their gender or their race. And so I just kind of think that now your rationale about the lieutenant governor is, just for our listeners, this lieutenant governor that currently sits there, yes, it started with Casey Cagle, right?
Yeah.
And they stripped his power.
His own party did it. Yes.
His own party did it. So the bigger issue here is that what I'm worried about, let's go forward, is now you're losing Jason Estevez.
Yeah.
You're losing Josh McLaurin. We just had new people come in like Kenya Wicks from Clayton County who succeeded Valencia C. You got Emmanuel Jones, Lisa, now who's running for Congress. I mean, we're going to literally have about 4 to 5, maybe even 6 vacancies on the Democratic side. So we got to
more on the Republican side.
Hold on, I'm going there. So
Yeah.
now here lies where I think a Josh McLaurin is looking at with all the Republicans. My homeboy Kouser out there in the streets now with his lovely wife, Amy, who gave me a shout out. So thank you so much for that shout out. Also, Brian Strickland, who, your friend Lindsey Strickland is there as well. And you'll probably have Kennedy who may run, and you may have some more. So my point is, Lisa.
Hillary.
Yeah, my boy Gooch, who's looking good, by the way. Have you seen Gooch on Instagram lately?
Yes, of course.
Man, I can talk about him too, Lisa. His wife is a big fan.
Yeah.
See, here's the key. The white women love me. All right, the spouses.
They love
Brian
you,
knows this is true. I can come on this show and shout out these white men, wives, because I have a relationship with them. And in that vein, I know we're wrapping up to go to another segue, but I also want to wish First Lady Marty Kemp a happy birthday. Her birthday was on Sunday. I sent her a nice text, B-Rob. She didn't give me the thumbs up, the typical Kemp thing.
Yeah,
They
right.
just give you the little thumbs up. But she said, thank you so much, Tharon. We really appreciate you. So back to my original point. You're going to have probably about a dozen open seats, maybe even more, right, B-Rob? So if Democrats can retain the people who we're losing, and if we can start picking up seats in 2026, which is going to be difficult. I think that's where Brian is saying, hey, if a Democrat wins, he or she will not have any powers because Republicans will take it away. But I think what Josh and others see is that if you can win, and even if you're there and you don't have a lot of responsibility, the state is changing, and we just got to pick up some seats in the Senate. And then one day that lieutenant governor position can be just a little bit more powerful.
Yeah, I'd like to do away with it. I mean, or at least they need to restructure it in some way.
Well, from a lobbyist standpoint, Brian, you know this, right? If the lieutenant governor supports something, that helps sometimes with pushing policy.
Sure.
I mean, this was the message from the tort reform people, right? The governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker, and the business community. And so that just adds weight and I think value. So there is things that the lieutenant governor's office helps with. But you're right. I mean, they get a chance to spend 8 months out of the year going around the state and making speeches, cutting ribbons, going on trade trips. I don't think that happens as much anymore. And, really trying to maintain their caucus.
Yeah. Look, if you want a job, and look, I've had a job where I literally did nothing. I had one job in my life where, we just stood around and watched the paint dry for 8 hours a day. If that's what you want, being a Democrat lieutenant governor is a great job. Absolutely. Because you're just going to get to screw around all the time if that's what you want to do.
One person who's doing pretty good in his job is Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens. Has a really high approval rating. A poll from the Committee for a Better Atlanta shows him at 65% approval rating. Any surprises there, Tharon?
This mayor, Lisa, has just been on fire since day one. And I just want to remind our listeners, this is an administration that started off the first year, was coming out of the Bottoms administration. And there were just a few things that were in front of him. Number one, public safety was paramount. Not only the public safety training center, but just trying to get the homicides down, making Buckhead not succeed a way to de-annex from the city of Atlanta. He also was very bold about affordable housing and working with the state. And so all those things, and I can probably name 3 or 4 more, Lisa, is really been so, I think, tangible to these polling numbers that we're seeing. But also one thing that people that say about Mayor Dickens, and I was with him this weekend, and shout out to the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. We did our Alpha Derby. A lot of your sorority sisters was there. Lisa, the K's and the Deltas and the Zetas and the Sigma Gamma Rhos, all of them came out. And then, of course, the mayor being a Noop. We appreciate the Noops and the others folks that were there. But just watching him interact with people. I mean, the guy couldn't sit down. We were just trying to talk, and every time we get into the meat of the subject matter, someone is coming and want to take a picture. And so that's the kind of just accessibility and energy that I think he brings to the job. And he's raising a lot of money too. I mean, he's not, he's like, look, man, I got to have a war chest built up because I know we'll talk about this later, but you have a bunch of open council seats that are coming up too. Doug Shimon is not running again. Howard Shook is not running again. Amir Faroqi is not running again. So you'll have some musical kind of political chairs going on where other council members will be running for higher office. So he'll need to make sure he has enough money to push that agenda as well. But no, I'm not so shocked with the poll numbers. I think the mayor's doing a great job.
I'd say I'm a little shocked, not because of any doubts about the leadership of Andre Dickens, just because it's just really hard to get to those numbers, particularly in a citywide position where probably not everybody is tuned in to what you're doing. But if you dig in a little bit, Andre Dickens came in at a time with tremendous concern amongst the electorate about crime in the city. We were kind of coming out of that COVID period, high levels of violent crime in the city, so much so, as Tharon said, that parts of the city wanted to leave and create a second city. You're not hearing that discussion anymore. That is a tribute to the leadership that Andre Dickens has shown. I think standing firm against the far left on the Public Safety Training Center sent a really strong signal. We did not know when he did that if there would be a big backlash against him, if that would hurt him politically into his reelect. Look, 65% means he did the right thing and that the silent majority was with him, even if a very vocal minority opposed him vociferously. So doing the right thing paid off politically. Doesn't always, but it did in this case. So Andre Dickens now looks like he's going to cruise to re-election and perhaps have a mandate. And if he has a mandate, perhaps he can do the things that voters in this poll are saying, emphasize transportation infrastructure and housing. Those are big deals, and if he's able to win big and have a role in who is elected to city council, he has the opportunity in his second term to be a generational leader for the city, to have a legacy that greatly matters. You can name a few mayors in the past who've done that, like Shirley Franklin, certainly, Maynard Jackson. Those come to mind. He has a chance to be in that mold.
Well said. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Before we get out of here, I want to talk about last week's show. We had Senator Jon Ossoff on as a guest, and a very popular guest. A lot of people listened to the show. They downloaded the podcast. And I don't know, what were your thoughts? He's always pretty authentic, and, he doesn't dodge any questions, does he? He hits them head on, doesn't he?
Well, that's the one thing that I heard from people who listened to it. And some of our most loyal listeners actually download the podcast. So please download the clicks. That's how me and Brian are rated. If y'all just hear no shade of Morning Edition, because I love to hear it. And, and you guys do a great job of raising all that money last week from the listeners as well. Yeah. But we get judged on downloads and clicks. And so what I was very happy about is also the Ossoff team really was anxious to get him on the show because we had been talking about him for so much and never had him on to talk. But the authenticity and the very just, which we don't get a lot from Washington, just telling the people the truth about what he's doing and what he's not doing and what he wants to do more of and telling us what he was hearing. And then, of course, the little exchange between him and B-Rob. B-Rob tried to poke the bear a little bit, I know he thinks that he was attacked when he said Brian. but that was the Jon Ossoff that I think the people of Georgia know. And I think that he really talked about his work. And he was funny and he was engaging. And so thank you again to the senator for doing it. And I hope we can do it again before the election.
Yeah. No, and I did not feel attacked, just for the record. I just thought
you're used to it, aren't you? Both of you have thick skin. You have to have thick skin.
It's so much fun to have, it's so much more fun. You have that interplay. And what I said to Tharon was, I thought Senator Ossoff was very spicy with us. That's what I thought.
Right. You did use that word.
Yeah, he just seemed to be spoiling for a fight a little bit. I will say, I asked him about one of the top issues. AJC actually ended up doing a piece about
our
interchange. I appreciate that. And, and of course, in that interchange, you saw him say my name a lot. Brian. Yeah. My thing on the sports issue is it continues to have relevance whether Democrats want it to or not. No matter how Democrats downplay it, it moves the needles with the voters. That is why you saw that ad about they, them so much last fall. That is why you saw the first ad against Ossoff focusing on that vote. And where I disagree with John on the merits is this is not an issue created by Republicans. It wasn't Republicans who just out of nowhere 10 years ago started saying, we don't want anybody having their pronouns in their email signature. We don't want biological males in girls' sports. It was the left saying we have to accept all of this as normal immediately. Everything we've ever believed before is now null and void, and gender is not real. And in fact, you get to just pick what gender you are, or not at all, whatever. There are other options apparently besides male and female. And that's just not where Americans are. And we were told immediately, you got to accept all this or you're a bigot. And so you're seeing a massive backlash to that right now. So Democrats can downplay it, which is fine. I want them to, because I think it's going to be a benefit for Republicans in the election.
Yeah, listen, Senator Ossoff will be fine on that issue. I think his strategy, to answer your question, was point on. It is true. In 2025, it's not the Democrats who are talking about this. The Republicans are talking about it for this reason you just talked about it, right? And you and I both know, B-Rob, that we heard some feedback from a particular woman who was in the car with her daughter, and those young people gave their perspective about how they don't feel threatened in sports. They're fine. They're not running into these transgender sports athletes, right? And so it's, again, so I think I totally agree with the senator that you guys are just enamored and you guys fantasize about it. I mean, you guys just glorify Democrats. It is not an issue that we want to be talking about. But when you have Republicans want to bring it up for a vote, he will have to defend his vote, and I'm sure he'll do that. But we've moved on, and we're trying to talk about jobs, education, and healthcare. I mean, that's really what we're talking about as the Democratic Party of Georgia and National Democrats.
That's why Democrats should just vote yes for these bills and move on, right?
But we just want the Republicans to bring up bills that actually are, and it's not even going on. You can't even show me cases, right? I mean, that's what his point. Like, show me a case of where it's happening, Brian. That's kind of his thing. So this is so we got to let our listeners know that this is manufactured chaos by the Republicans.
Yeah, we all saw the pictures of Leah Thomas. Here's the thing: y'all keep telling us this isn't happening, and until we stopped it, it was happening. And you're telling voters, don't believe your lying eyes, and it's not going to work.
Yeah, I think that it's a middle America out there. I had a guy at the Georgia Chamber of Commerce dinner tell me this week that he was a militant moderate. And I was like, what does that mean? I'm sure you've heard that before, right? But we talked about this issue, and his thing was, look, I'm a conservative on some things, I'm progressive on other things. But if someone wants to put pronouns in their email signatures, it's okay. It's not going to hurt your bottom line, Brian. You will still be able to provide for your family. You'll still get hired. People will still call on you and ask you for your advice. It is not a issue that is going to be detrimental to your plight as a white man in this country. Let me say that to you. You will be okay, brother. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. All right. You know, these people can put their pronouns in their signatures. It's okay. And I think people should do it, and people should love who they want to love. And I think that these parents, however you decide to raise your kids is fine. But if they decide to go try to have, a transgender surgery, you've heard the impact, Brian, of how that affects that family and that individual. And so, but again, I'm going back to the stats, and I think this is what the senator was saying. It's not happening. We're not seeing that in Georgia. It was something, yes, that Democrats used to talk about, but we don't talk about it anymore. And it's not a part of our main platform.
I'll say I live with this. I appreciate the civility of your response there. And I do. Seriously, because this stuff gets to be so tricky. But I am center right, and there are a few issues where I agree with. I have some commonality with liberals, and I have sometimes worked in my business with sort of groups that are center left, people that I disagree with most of the time. But sometime around COVID, I remember being the first time being on a conference call with a bunch of liberals, and they all went around and introduced themselves and gave their pronouns. And I wondered, I was just like, I gotta get out of this. This is crazy. Why are we wasting time on this, right? How about this? My name is Brian. That should be all the context clues
you need to know
the
story,
about my
right?
Yeah.
But did you die? Did you make it off that call?
No, I got paid.
Okay, right?
I got paid.
You got paid. There we go. That's my point.
There, I was easing out to a Cinco de Mayo lunch, and we started talking about Senator Ossoff, and then here we go again. Yeah. All right, guys. Great show, and we'll do it again next week.
Thanks, all.
Thank you so
have
much.
a good one. Bye-bye. Bye.